So I thought that since you are teachers, and I'm doing a sort of activity in class for that, which I think helps a lot. Before I start, I wanted to propose you to do this activity, which needs a little bit of motion. So you don't have to you will be on your seat, so it's not too much motion. But if you agree, we do it. Yes, we do it. So focal mechanism. Ooh. Oh, I'm not. I'm pressing the wrong button. So you are. This is you from above, right now. And what we will do is that we will imagine there is a fault that goes. You are on the fault stuff. Because right there. So be sure you are on one side or the other of the fault. So this is what type of fault? It's a sinistral fault. Okay, sinistral fault. So it means that this block here will move this way. So it means on your chair, you will do that. That's great. You will do that. And the block here will move this way. So we'll do that. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Good start. That's a good start. It was better than with the students. So on this fault, there will be an earthquake right in the middle. So you'll be at the exact place of the earthquake. Maybe there is an empty one here. We'll make the earthquake here. No, maybe just it's going to be good. You yourself is going to be the place where you are. There will be the earthquake. Yeah, I'll show you. And so, what we'll do now is that you will be like seismometers. So you will record the first P wave arriving, the motion of the first P wave arriving. And so, what you will do, you will move as the seismic wave comes. So it means that if you are close to the earthquake, you will move before the others. All right? So you will do the wave, like in the stadium, like for the Olympic Games and stuff like that, but with the right motion. And you will have a goal is to record what is the first displacement you record. So you start like that with a better shape. So this is maybe you see who this person is. It's Theresa May in a plane. And so there is a distance between the two Theresa May. It's the only picture I found that could work with what I wanted to do. So I don't really like to talk about Brexit, as too many people. But anyways, so if the motion is that way, meaning that this person moves this way first, then this will be an extension, a dilation of. That's what the displacement you will record. All right. So, and if it's like that, the displacement will be a compression. Okay? So you will do the motion with the wave, and you try to see if the first motion you record is shortening or extension. All right? Could you do that? You think you can do that? We're going to make the try. So, oops. So I go back to that. And I can't carry the microphone. You're lucky I prepare you to the earthquake. So I would say 3, 2, 1, and then earthquake, and then you try to propagate the wave and try to record what's the motion you experience, the displacement you experience, okay? So it's 3, 2, 1, earthquake. All right. That's great. All right. These are surface waves coming. So now, I would like to ask you if you thought you recorded compressive motion. And recording, you don't think about the focal mechanism if you already know. Just not in the theory, just your experience. If you recorded compression, can you just stand up, please? The people who recorded the compression? Yeah, you go. It's not to be wrong or bad, or you experience something, and we try to see what it was. All right. I feel that you're not sure of what you've recorded, so we may do it one more time. Yes. All right. We do it one more time. Okay. And then you try to see if the distance between the person in front of you or at your back. This distance, the first motion you record is a shortening or extension. All right? All right, all right. So, 3, 2, 1. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so now we do it again. You stand up if you think it's a compression that you recorded. There you go. You don't care about being wrong or bad. We're going to see. All right. Yeah, it's close to be okay. So I'm going to move again, and so just to make sure. So when you're here, your first motion, you go that way, but the people in front of you, they've not moved yet because the wave is going this way. So the first record that you have this area is stretching. Okay? But if I'm there you move backwards. So the person before, just that is there, records compression. All right? So all the people here, it's compression that you have recorded. And on this side, it's you move like that. So the first motion that you record is compression. And here, you move, no. Compression here and stretching there. Because what you do here, here it's so close, but if you are there, you have people in front of you who are moving like that before you ever move. So what you see is that the first motion is people in front of you did that before you move, so it's stretching. Okay, so here stretching and there compression. Okay, and so. Up. So here in red, these are the areas people recorded compression, and it corresponds to what we had in the room, of course, and it gives you a feeling of how to build a focal mechanism. I hope it helped. All right. So now I move to my talk. So my talk is about you'll see shape of plate tectonics to come. So it's just to say that this is the map, you know, the hypsometry of the Earth today, the topography, which is one of maybe it's the major observation that the geologists wanted to explain when they designed the theory of plate tectonics. And now we have this type of models with many plates. So here there are more than 50 plates. And what you see on this map is you see the different plates, and you see areas in like that, right here. This type of areas are places where plate tectonics that don't work. Okay, that doesn't work here. The theory it works in many places, but it doesn't work here. And unfortunately, these places are places where geologists like to go. So we like to go in the mountains, in rifts, in places like that. And this is where, plate tectonics doesn't work, the theory doesn't work. So we need to move on and to make some progress compared to the initial theory that already made a leap forward in the field of geology. But there's still room for improvement, and we need to explain the mountains, the rift, how they form, and plate tectonics cannot really help for now. So it's why I'm going to try to give you some shapes of plate tectonics to come, so the future. So what's going to be the future? I don't know. How do I know? When we do science, we don't know about the future. So we try to make predictions, but predictions are interesting when we can verify them. So I don't know what's going to be the future. So the goal, what I'm going to do now, is more to try to present you sort of different directions that people take to push the boundaries of plate tectonics today. So I'll start with the initial theory of plate tectonics. And I show you this video because it's also one of different digital resources that you may be able to use in class that I'm going to show you after. So I just try to show you the theory. So plate tectonics, you put rigid plates on a sphere. You may have seen that before. I kind of like that video. And we try to see the motion of these plates, relative motion, so subduction zone right here. Well, you already know easily about that. So just to show you the configuration of this three-plate system. And see here you see the ridges. And we have also transform fault in that system. All right. And what we're going to try to do now is just to give you a view that when you have rigid plates, then you have this Euler pole. I know that you know that already, but I think it's an interesting video to show anyway. So the relative motion, it's an axis, the Euler axis. You can see that, and when you have the polar view on this Euler axis, you really see that it's a rotation that's going on. And what you see is that the location of the transform faults are always on this, what we say, the small circles, and the center of the circle is on the Euler axis. Okay, and so it's just transform fault is because Carlo asked me to talk about transform fault. Transform faults are just a product of geometry. It's not because velocity varies over a plate or something like that. It's just because the segments of the other segments are not aligned. So we need to make a connection between these segments, and they are on these small circles. And we can see that over rigid plates, the velocity varies over these rigid plates, and that doesn't deform the plate. All right, we can see that. So we will see 3 points at different locations on the plate, and you will see that, for instance, this one moves much faster than this one. All right. Again, it's all about the spherical geometry, and I think for teaching, it's very difficult to teach that without this type of resource, to teach the 3D spherical geometry. It's why, before I'm going to move to what's going to be next for plate tectonics, I give you, so you have many resources about plate tectonics and 3D stuff here. It's called 3D Geosciences 3D. It's also in English. You have here the QR code. And if you type Geosciences 3D, Lyon, you can find it. And these are resources for teaching and in high school, actually in France. In France, but it's in English, so it can be also at the university. And some resources you may like, videos and also interactive stuff. All right. So this is basic plate tectonics. How can we move on? So one of the big products of plate tectonics is plate reconstructions. This type of movie you may have seen. So this plate reconstruction is really the big thing. Many different disciplines use it. And this is what comes out of the theory. So in a way, what we do to get that is that we take some observation. We have a theory, it's plate tectonics. We have a cooking system, meaning that there is the man of the people here, the hand of the people coming, the know-how somewhere, and then what we get is the final picture. So the final picture may not look like the original one, but it's always what we do. It is not for plate, it's just to not only for plate tectonics, almost for all inverse problems that we have. We have this problem of connecting observation, theory. We have to play with the tools and then to get something that which is the best we can right now. So the best we can right now is really the reconstruction I showed you before, and it's really helpful to so many people in the field of geosciences. So I take the description to see where people push to make progress for plate tectonics. So the first push that people try to make is to have more input, more information, more observations. This is really the root of what we do. So we have a problem with using for plate reconstruction is to have more observations, because this, you know, if you take, for instance, this area here, the older ocean is about 50 million years. And here we know that a lot of the Pacific Ocean have disappeared below North America. So we have areas in the world that if we want to reconstruct what happens, we have no information anymore. And even if we have, if we go to the older parts of the oceans, it's not more than 200 and something million years, which is so small compared to the history of the planet. Okay, so we try to push and to have new observation. And one problem also is that so this is the hollow earth. I don't know if you know about this theory of hollow earth. You know, it's imagination. It's just to say that when we make a plate reconstruction, we often imagine that we do like if there was nothing inside the earth. We just work on the surface observations, which are already the most productive, in a way, observations for sure. But we can try to change the view from this sort of hollow earth and to try to take information from what's inside. So there is different generations of push made with the observations, and I call them plate tectonic enhancers. It's to try to find information inside. Can be sometimes inside the mantle, and try to use this observation to carry further the plate reconstructions. And so what people use usually is the tomographic models, images, and they try to use that to have information about the motion that were at the surface. So what they do is a bit like, there is a well, and you take the rope and you try to bring some information, some water at the surface. That's what we do. And what is the rope? In fact, these are slabs. We try to take slabs. There we see slabs in the mantle. You're familiar with that, I guess. So it's like slabs. We just pull on them to take them back to the surface and to have new information for the plates that existed at the surface before. All right. So you have several groups who do that. So they observe a slab now, and they try to reconstruct what was the position of the slab at the surface. And when they do that, they make some assumptions. First, the tomographic images there are uncertainties, not really easy to interpret. And also, you imagine that the slabs just sink completely vertically. It's an assumption, but it's a start to do that. So when you do that, you put slabs at the surface, and then you can make some reconstruction. So the most recent and which made an impact recently was doing that around the Andes. And what was proposed is that the Andes, there was a subduction north of the Andes at 60 million years, and this subduction progressively extended to the south. And it's a sort of a revision of what was the history of subduction below the Andes. Before, people would think that there was subduction all the way, but here it's a propagation southward, according to this type of reconstruction. So here, the enhancer comes from the slabs. And some people do some same type of things. So they take this tomographic model. So here, these are maps at different depths. And what they say is that when we see a blue anomaly, this is an ancient slab. Slab, they sink vertically. So it means that at the surface, considering the time it takes for a slab to sink at this depth, then it means that there was a subduction zone at the surface in the past. Do you get that? Yeah, all right. So they assume a sinking rate for slabs. It gives you a time where there was an age for subduction at the surface. So here is depth, right? You have this reconstruction here. You have this reconstruction right here. And so this helps to make great progress, because even if there are assumptions, I mean, even if the assumptions are not fully perfect, or even if we make mistakes, or if you need to be cautious with that, then it shows that subductions within the oceans that disappeared may be a big factor in the past for the tectonics at the surface. Right now, people imagine that subduction happens only at continent ocean boundaries, right? But it's not the case. We know it's not the case. And in the past, there may have been a lot of subduction into the oceans, Pacific Ocean, for instance. We have some problems. One of the big assumptions that we make when we do this type of models, that we assume that there is vertical sinking of slabs. And something we know is that there is a net rotation of the surface compared to the interior of the planet. All right? Right now, all the tectonic plates have a sort of collective motion towards the west. So if a slab sinks vertically and the surface moves west, you know, the assumption of vertical connection, it may be too fast. And this, we don't know very well how it works, this net rotation. It's the question of the reference frame all the time. We still have problems to know what reference frame to use, and even making a reference frame is still a big question. So this is a new different enhancer, is the geodynamics enhancer. So here, the thing is to say, we're going to assume some rules for the geodynamic features at the surface of the Earth. And these rules will help us to solve some problems. So I'm going to present you one rule. So there were some observations in tomography of this big red stuff at the base of the mantle. You may have heard them, LLSVPs. You've heard about them? All right. So these dense things. And so they are here. And there are different observations that suggest that they have been here with the same shape for quite some time. Maybe not all the time, but at least in the past 100 or 200 million years, something like that. And so people make some models, and if they say that if the structure is stable, then it's like a reference for the whole system. And the idea that they have is that mantle plumes, they come from these LLSVPs, and especially from the edges of these LLSVPs. So in that model, it's not only from these edges, but you have some groups who say, and they have some arguments, that the edges is the generation zone of the plumes. So if we assume that the LLSVPs were fixed, that the borders corresponds, if there is a plume, it comes from the border, then the hotspot location at the surface tell us about the relative position of the surface relative to the shape of these LLSVPs. You see what I mean or not? Yeah. So there is an example here, for instance, a reconstruction a long time ago. Here you have the South China Craton, and there was the emplacement of a large igneous province. And because there was the emplacement of a large igneous province here, they assumed that it was on the border, on the edge of one LLSVP. And so they found the best location for the reconstruction, and they would put the South China Craton right here. So if you don't have this information, you could put the South China Craton in many other places. So assuming this sort of geodynamic rule helps you to make better plate reconstruction. You see? All right. The difficulty is that it's like me when I look at I try to understand the rules of cricket. I don't understand. But these geodynamic rules right now, they are not established. We don't really understand yet. So we make assumption it works that way. We can have some good arguments, but right now, a lot of these geodynamic rules we will use, like the plates, the trench retreats cannot be faster than the velocity of a continent cannot be faster than there is a velocity limit or something like that. These are rules that people sort of make up. They use a bit of the physics, but the models, they're not demonstrated. The theory have not been demonstrated yet. So these rules may not work. We don't really know. All right. So these were how you can enhance plate tectonics with new sets of observations. And now what I want to go to is how we can try to modify the theory, which is the plate tectonic theory, to make the reconstructions. And so it's what I call the bionic plate tectonics. So now it's more that we add technology, or technology, or it's not like pills that we take. So the first thing is to consider that plates, they are not rigid. All right, it's nice, huh? So plates are not rigid. We know that they are not perfectly rigid. Like if you go to a mountain belt or something like that, you see that, no, it's not rigid. There are many places where the demonstration is not rigid. But how can we take that into account in the theory of plate tectonics? So there was some attempts to look at, because we always think about mountain belts, but also in the oceans we see that there is diffuse deformation in the plates, in some plates. And this is an area here where there is diffuse deformation between India and Australia. And it's motivated some scientists to build a new type of plate boundary, which is called diffuse plate boundary. Right? And so what is the goal here is to assume that the plate boundaries has a certain thickness, and you have to put into that the mechanical properties of the rocks. And when they did that, I won't go into the detail, but just to say that they sort of built a theory for the development and the motion of this type of plate boundary, which comes from the plate tectonics tradition and have a little bit of mechanics in it. And it's very interesting work that has been done about this. What people do too is they try to make mechanical models, regional mechanical models. So this one is an old one right now, but still it was to model something which was not completely rigid for the tectonics. So the idea here was to take a piece of viscous material, and here sort of imposing some conditions of kinematics. So you see from the top, and this would be like India going into Asia. And with that model, they tried to see what is the kinematics, the diffuse kinematics within Asia. And there's been a lot of work about this, trying to see how the deformation diffuses into the plate of Asia. So this is the same type of model now that people do, numerical models. So what is done here, you have some sort of precursor of faults here, which are like mid-ocean ridges. And this model is going to be stretched, so they will impose velocities on the sides and try to understand the development of transform fault. And it goes through, so what you see from the top. And you see that the ridges here, and there is a progressive evolution to get the strict transform fault. And here we could say we have rigid plates, but here it's not really a rigid. It's not really rigid in this area here when it's developing. Okay, so people are making mechanical models in which they will impose some kinematics on the border. So the real thing here is to put the mechanics into the system. Unfortunately, with this model, is that we don't know about the forces that drive this kind of motion. Here, they are always imposed. You impose the motion of the Indian plate. You impose the stretching of, they impose the stretching right here. And so, what are the forces that really drive plate tectonics? This is the ultimate question, to have a full model of the tectonic and mantle system. So it's what people are trying to do too now. So this is an example of what some people try to do. So they make a model of the full mantle with the surface. And what they do is that they impose the structure of plates at the surface and regions where there should be localization of deformation. they put mechanical properties into that. All right? And what they do then is that they sort of design the thermal field, the temperature within the mantle that should be driving a flow within the mantle, if you see what I mean. And so they design the whole thing, and they just see instantaneously what could be the flow inside the mantle produced by these buoyancy forces that they put. You see slabs here. And what kind of velocity field it would generate at the surface. So in a way, you generate a kinematic field, the velocity field at the surface, which doesn't come from plate tectonics. The thing that comes from plate tectonics in this model would be the layout of the plates, the plate boundaries. Okay? But the kinematics is not by reconstruction, or it's just an output, full output of the system. So it's a new generation in a way of model. And so what you have here, well, we don't care about this, but we can look at this plate here. And with this type of model, what you have is you produce this black arrows, and the classic plate tectonic model for today's plate velocities is in green. And so you see that there are some differences, but it's in progress right now that taking fully the mechanics take you to the plate tectonic model today, but in some areas where we have diffuse deformation, this model will do better because it takes into account the non-rigidity of plates, which is not the case for pure plate tectonics. You see? All right. And what is interesting also with that type of model is that we have vertical motion. With the plate tectonic theory just tells you about lateral motion. Okay, but it doesn't tell you how continents, oceans, they can, there's this dynamic topography that maybe Clint Conrad talked to you about, this motion like that, doesn't tell you much about this. So this type of model, this mechanical model with the buoyancy force in the mantle, they tell you about they give you a more 3D kinematic vision of the planet. The thing which is difficult with that is that we can estimate the buoyancy field today because we have seismic tomography telling us where are the slabs in the upper mantle and in the lower mantle. So we can have a sort of estimate, we can build an estimate of the forces inside the mantle that have an impact at the surface. But it's good for today, but we cannot go back in the past. That's why I put this car that you may know, Back to the Future. So we can do that for today, but for the reconstruction of Pangaea, we don't know what was the buoyancy field inside the system. So we are a bit stuck with that. So another way to make this progress, to go through this barrier of time, what we can do, so again, it's on the edge, so you won't see a result. Now plate tectonics is the best theory to use. But so what we can do now is try to build models where you explicitly treat the feedbacks between plates and the mantle. There's been a lot of fights between geologists and physicists. So some would say, it's the plates that control the system, and the physicists, they would say, no, it's the convection in the mantle that tells you everything about what's going on at the surface. And both are a reductionist view of a complex system. So, and I think for teachers, I just make a point right now. I'm a teacher too, so it's the way we. Now we see with the climate change and all the environmental problems that the reductionist view that is very often used in our disciplines is a big problem to make progress in science. Because things are complex, we need to have a more complete view, to have cross-disciplinary things, just not to speak and to have money, but really to make big progress, to make some change, to make some. When we have a complex system, if we have a reductionist view, we miss almost everything about it. So we have to build models with plates and mantle, which make one single system. They are all part of the same system. So we have to treat them together. And luckily, in the end of the 90s and early 2000, there was a leap forward in the modeling techniques for modeling the deformation of rocks, convection, and things like that. So the people were able to make computer programs, softwares, that could solve for the convective motion, putting the properties of rocks, some properties of rocks that would generate at the same time, self-consistently, some tectonic motion at the surface and convection inside. So we have the full coupling in that system. Whoa, I made a mistake, maybe. So there's now the full coupling, and so we can take into account the feedbacks between the surface and the interior. So you go above, right? This one here. Yeah, this one is good. Yeah, well, you can go back to that. So, and this type of model is in progress. It's very difficult it's a long time. It's very difficult to design, and it takes a lot of time for computers to solve the equations. I've not checked if the movie works, but I hope it works. And so this is the type of model that it makes. And I'd like to show you, if it comes. All right. So yeah, it's like a new window now, because we can see what, with this type of model, what is the self-organization of the whole thing. Let's try it. Yeah. So what you have. It works on that. So what you have here, you see a hot isotherm that shows you. It's not working, you know. Yeah. Anyways, I can just show you the picture. It's fine. It's better with the movie, but it's difficult here in this EGU to play movies. Everybody has troubles with that. Anyway, so what you see, if you can see it, could be nice. All right. So what you see here, you see it's a convection model with a sort of what we say plate-like behavior. What you have in red is a hot isotherm, so it shows you plumes, mantle plumes. What you have in blue, it's a cold isotherm, so it shows you the downwellings, which here are subduction. What you see at the surface in yellow, these are continental rafts that we put in the system. Okay, and when you have this kind of system, you can let it evolve and things like this. You can observe what happens at the surface. So this is the viscosity field at the surface, which is going to tell you about the sort of rigidity or strength of the surface. And you see in red, it means that it's very viscous. So if it's very red, it means that it's you are within a plate, almost rigid, very viscous. When it's in blue here, means that here the viscosity dropped because you reached a certain stress, so the rocks, they fail, and they can deform very fast. So what you have in blue, this is plate boundaries, okay? So, and these plate boundaries, they emerge self-consistently from this buoyancy field here, from the forces from the interior. And what you see, the arrows, they tell you about the motion that you have at the surface. And so you can make a connection between what you see inside and what you have at the surface. So here you see a ridge, with the motion is diverging, like that. You see the continents are here, but here this is the subduction zone. And if the movie was working, we could see the changes of the shape of the ridge. In fact, we can see with this type of model how a ridge starts, how it initiates, how it stops, how a new subduction interacts with the ridge, or things like that. Things that we could not know or imagine before, right? So this is and in this type of model, yeah, we can go to the next. This is a different type of models. You have these release VPs. So this is the structure inside. Temperature structure inside, and you can see the surface. You have transform faults, ridges, trenches, the continents right here. So we start to have models that produce self-consistently tectonic evolutions on sort of virtual Earth. So the problem is that it takes a very long time to compute that, and one of the problem too is that we need to know about the Earth. It's nice to have virtual planets, but we need to make the connection between the observation, these models, and yeah. And so one of the what we could so if we could imagine a future, I don't know if the movie is going to work. I guess it's not going to work. But can you try on this one, the 54? No, it's not working. Yeah. Anyways, to understand the point, it's not so much of a problem, but is it working? No, before. Oh, yes. So you may know about this movie, Perpetual Ocean. Do you know about that? So, in fact, what you have here is the type, it's a numerical model for the flow inside the ocean. We have the observations from the satellites of the surface of the ocean, combining both with some mathematical methods and software. We are able to reconstruct the flow for the planet. So you mean the dynamic model, the observation, and what we say, the inverse model, the inverse method. So the observations, we have lots of observation, maybe not enough, but we have some observation. If we use the models I showed you before that make virtual Earth, we have models with sort of the physics. And so if we build these inverse methods to join the observations and this type of model, we may be able to do this kind of thing for the mantle and tectonics together. So this is the way I would see the future, but who knows what the future will be. Huh? So for now, I'd say that the plate tectonics theory is still the best that we can use, and we'll see in 50 years maybe how it's going to be. Thank you.